With the release of Pokemon Legends Arceus came a new fan favorite, Volo. And also, with the introduction of Volo, came a climatic battle that in itself has become iconic. Many have fallen several times during this fight, and have even called the encounter one of the most memorable in the entire franchise. Now, some players definitely struggled more than others, based on the type of team they had or how prepared they were. But regardless, it's generally accepted that Volo is far stronger than many of the most noteworthy trainers in the series. But exactly how strong is Volo? Volo being a pretty new character in the franchise means this is going to be a little different from previous discussions over how powerful a trainer is. He doesn't have any counterparts in other media such as the manga or anime, so we're generally going to try to stick with content from the main games. Still, we're going to try to see where he really stands in the series overall. First things first, let's address his team during the big battle at the Sinnoh Temple, a quick roll call of sorts. And as we start off with Spiritomb here, you'll notice very soon that his team is quite similar to Cynthia's. The Pokemon is only resistant to poison, but is outright immune to normal, fighting, and psychic. A pretty specific opener Pokemon for you to take on. Its defensive stats are also pretty high, but with low HP and very poor speed. All in all, it's still a pretty unique Pokemon to this day. Next, there's the offensively oriented Roserade, which only has 3 moves for some reason. He also has a Togekiss, another Pokemon known for its high special attack. Then there's Hisuian Arcanine, the only Pokemon he doesn't have in common with Cynthia. Unfortunately for Volo, it's probably the weakest link due to its typing. There's almost no way you're not going to have something water related to throw at it. His Arcanine also has an incomplete moveset just like his Roserade. The last 2 spots are unsurprisingly occupied by Lucario and Garchomp. That's right, no Milotic in his party. Rejoice. As for Lucario and Garchomp, their movesets are along the lines of what you'd expect, and fill their roles very well as 2 major pillars of his team. So this team is generally pretty solid, and players knew they were in for a pretty interesting fight. But there's something else you've been waiting for me to mention, isn't there? When Volo's initial team is defeated by the player, he summons Giratina to fight for him. Being able to have access and control to a legendary like that is absolutely insane, and is what puts Volo on a totally different threat level from other trainers. Giratina is also buffed, taking even less damage than usual for example, and when defeated, will simply go from its altered form to its origin form and will be fully healed. So this second phase of the battle is essentially like fighting 2 superpowered Pokemon. And since the player doesn't get the chance to heal between the 2 phases of this battle, it's really like battling against a trainer with 8 Pokemon. Story-wise, this also implies that he may not be entirely interested in a fair fight. That he just wants to achieve his goal, and therefore doesn't care if you have a chance to recover from what should have already been a victory. But now we get to the part that I've been excited to get into. Now that we've got over a basic overview of his team and certain circumstances, we can compare him to other trainers from the games and see how he stacks up. Again, Volo is a new character in this franchise. He hasn't been in other games and media. So I think this will be the best way to see where he ranks on the totem pole, and how strong of a trainer he truly is. In Gen 1, we have Blue, who defeats Lance to become the Pokemon champion. His team changes a little bit based on the starter he chooses, or what his Eevee evolves into. But the overall philosophy of those team compositions are similar enough. It's actually interesting to look back at his team in hindsight, because there's nothing outright overpowered on his team, at least on paper. Alakazam and Exeggutor were excellent psychic types back when that typing was crazy in Gen 1. And from another gameplay point of view, Blue's Pokemon are highly likely to be much higher than the players, so Blue offered a pretty good challenge for many, especially in the 90s. But even just on paper, Volo's team is a lot scarier. I like to imagine that if they were to face each other, Garchomp alone creates so many problems for Blue's team. In terms of difficulty though, Blue's team is a lot harder than it looks for those that haven't played the Gen 1 games or the Gen 3 remake. He does really well for himself considering his rather basic looking team. But Volo overall is still a tougher fight, especially if you're not overleveling yourself. This comparison is probably more interesting to look at if you want to see how different the final battles are thematically, and just how much has and hasn't changed over the past 25 years. I was originally going to move on to the Johto champion Lance, but there's not much to say. We actually did our own video on him, and to be blunt, there's not much of a comparison to Volo to make. Volo is a much harder battle. I like Lance, but his approach is just a bit too reliant on dragon types, along with a lot of small other factors. His rematch team is far more worth talking about, but not as much as who you're probably really wanting to hear me talk about, Trainer Red. Looking at Red may be one of the best ways to see where Volo stands, not only due to Red's strength as a trainer, but also due to how different his team is. His Pokemon range from 73 to 81 in the original Gen 2 games, and 80 to 88 in the remakes. While the philosophy of Volo's main team of 6 Pokemon feels like he's mostly trying to optimize, Red's team feels more like it's based on personal preference or attachment, which is clear by his Pikachu being his highest level Pokemon, as well as carrying every Kanto starter Pokemon. But the fact that Red is one of the most noteworthy and challenging battles in the series speaks to the fact that there's more to this than just what your team looks like on paper. That being said, is he really a more difficult fight than Volo? Red still only has 6 Pokemon, and it just feels like it's an easier fight to prepare for. Also, I can't believe I'm in a position where I can say only 6 Pokemon. Anyway, there's nothing about Red's team that feels cheap, like what Volo has in Giratina, that essentially revives itself while functioning as a 7th and 8th Pokemon at once. If there's something Red has over Volo, it's that all of his Pokemon have a more complete moveset. Seriously, I still don't understand why Volo slacked off on giving Arcanine and Roserade a full moveset. It's little things like having Pokemon with incomplete movesets, which make me wonder, from a story point of view, is Volo supposed to be a somewhat flawed trainer compared to what is expected of the player's skill? I mean, I suppose that your player character in this game is really the only one that would be at all super familiar with the true meaning of Pokemon battling. Though in the end, I think it's safe to conclude that Volo is going to be a harder fight for most players than Red. But in story, would Red beat Volo? Red and his team are supposed to be a representation of the player, and your player character in Legends Arceus does in the end defeat Volo. In the end, Volo having such a powerful version of Giratina as what is essentially an addition to a full team gives him this image of a larger than life true final boss. So personally, I think it's genuinely interesting to think about which trainers can actually defeat him in battle within the canon, aside from the player, despite his obvious advantages. I think now it's appropriate to fast forward a bit to the Gen 4 champion, Cynthia. You all knew this comparison was coming. There's a lot to talk about these two beyond just their strengths as trainers, but maybe we can leave that for another time. So between Cynthia and Volo, I'm actually quite undecided which of the two are more difficult. But I don't think we need to know who is outright harder to beat in order to articulate other factors about Volo. For example, their teams are nearly identical. If you were to compare his team to Cynthia's team in Platinum, the only difference is that Volo has Hisui and Arcanine instead of Milotic. But that really is one of the major flaws in his team. As strong as Volo is, this shows that he's somehow still not as strong as he could be. That Arcanine is absolutely the weak link in his team, especially after you're familiar with the team. It's not even a bad Pokemon either, but absolutely out of place among the rest of his team. Hisui and Arcanine, being Fire and Rock, has a 4 times weakness to 2 very common move types, Water and Ground. Even though it has a pretty healthy stat distribution all around, chances are you'll find it very easy to defeat because of those horrific weaknesses. The fact that it doesn't even have 4 moves is also really bad, and just weird. And remember when I described Volo's Lucario and Garchomp as his 2 pillars? Well, Cynthia has 3 pillars, with Lucario, Garchomp, and Milotic. If it weren't for Giratina, I'd consider Cynthia the harder fight easily, and the stronger trainer overall as well. But this goes to show how crazy the Giratina aspect of his team is. It makes me wonder, would Cynthia look down on Volo for him using a legendary Pokemon? Moving away from Cynthia, you know what Volo's battle reminds me of a little bit? Ghetsis in Black and White 2. They both challenged a player with a legendary separate from their normal team, though Ghetsis starts the battle with his Kyurem rather than ending with it. The big difference here is that after you defeat Kyurem, your party is healed before you face off with Ghetsis' normal team of 6 Pokemon. Once again, the game does not do this for you in Legends Arceus, and I think that's actually pretty great. They could have played it safe and done the same thing, but not getting healed before facing off against a super-powered Giratina adds so much more tension and finality to the fight. The challenge Ghetsis represents with his battles in both Black and White games are respectable, but otherwise not really comparable outside of the concept of him having a legendary Pokemon to battle with initially. And even then, the fact you're healed after Kyurem makes it more like a story event rather than part of a singular fight with him. Most people remember the battle with Ghetsis more because of Pokemon like his Hydreigon, and not the legendary beforehand. With Volo, Giratina's presence is so intense and menacing that when you defeat it, the game doesn't just say you defeated Volo or you've defeated Giratina. Instead, the game very appropriately says, you finally beat Giratina. So how strong is Volo? Yeah, really strong. One of the strongest, quite frankly. I don't think anyone was expecting anything less. Legends Arceus is still pretty new, so it's still hard to say exactly where he would land on a tier list of trainer battles, but he'd definitely be near the top. But what about you? How strong do you think Volo is? Where do you think he ranks next to other trainers? Let me know in the comments below. Welcome back to the outro, folks, your favorite part of the video. Thank you for enjoying another Mystic Umbreon video. We made it through the end of the 8th generation, and now we begin the long trek into late 2022 where Pokemon Scarlet and Violet await us. It's a whole new world we'll live in, but we still gotta catch them all. However, there's still a ton of videos to do and experiences to have until then. If you're interested in more Mystic content, check out my TikTok and the Mystic Umbreon Shorts YouTube channel. If we get the 10k followers on TikTok, I'll be doing a viewer's choice video. If you like Genshin Impact, check out my Genshin channel Teibachinary. So if you all enjoyed, be sure to leave a like and subscribe for more. See you next time.